This is the round, and all of this inside here, this is from shrill. Like I can't say that word.
This is not the way it's supposed to be. A 3-year-old offering her father help with vocabulary.
Crap.
But since Scott Thorne came back from Iraq with a bullet in his brain, very little has been quite the way it should be.
I'm getting better on my speech. I'm starting to be able to feel my hands, my feet, right half my body.
This 27-year-old Army scout almost lost it all. Speech, vision, the ability to walk, his life. That he's here to tell his story is a testament to dedicated doctors and to his own determination to come back to his little girl.
It is cold here. I have my house, I got my little girl. Yeah, I'm feeling better. It helps me to feel better when I get home.
At home in a suburb of San Diego, Scott is rebuilding his life, little by little. It's a world away from the dangers of Iraq and the dusty street where he almost died.
Most people try to forget about that day.
It was September 14th, 2004. Scott and his unit were on patrol in the northern city of Mosul.
It was 130. It was hot.
As a combat veteran, he had spent most of his 11 months in Iraq with a specialized outfit tracking insurgents along the border with Syria. But on this day, the young sergeant and his men were in a densely populated city where the enemy could hide in plain sight.
And the whole time we were there, they were firing in different places.
Being a soldier was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream for Scott. He signed the papers to enlist even before he graduated from high school, despite his parents' objections. When he eventually deployed to Iraq, they followed the escalating violence and worried.
Every mother is always scared.
We certainly weren't happy that he was over there, that he was deployed in a combat zone. It's not a fun thing to have happen. But we knew that because of his training and the people that were with him, that he'd have a really good chance of coming out okay.
But war is unpredictable. In the moments before Scott was shot, his squad was on a break from an uneventful patrol. Suddenly, 2 vehicles pulled up on either side of them, and a man walked toward him carrying a weapon.
I fired up right at where he was.
As Scott was about to fire again, he felt something strike his head.
All of a sudden, I couldn't see anything very well. I kept firing though, of course, and then I couldn't hear the vehicles anymore. They were gone. So, and right when I did that, I fell right in the ground. I just laid down there. I looked up. I couldn't hear anything. Then I could hear was my heart.
The hit-and-run attack left 1 member of the patrol dead and Scott and 4 others wounded. These photographs were taken as they arrived at the Combat Support Hospital in Mosul. That's Scott on a stretcher.
The man with the blood on his head here is Specialist McCracken. He was a member of the squad, the only one who was not injured, and he's holding Scott's right hand. He thinks it's no big deal, but I've thanked him innumerable times for being there for him.
I tried to say something, but he didn't understand what I was saying. I grabbed his hand. I wanted him to look at me so I could tell him, trying to say goodbye.
But it wasn't Scott's time to die. 8 days later, he was at Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington, D.C. in serious condition, partially blind, unable to speak, and paralyzed on the right side of his body. His family was there with him. Even Allie, his 7-week-old daughter, took her turn.
At the time I was hurt. I just want to make sure I know where she is. All the time that I was in the hospital and stuff, she would go to sleep with me.
Since the day Allie was born, there had been no one more important in Scott's life.
I had to do that, pick her up, and hold her. That was it. Nothing else matters.
In his first days at Walter Reed, he was conscious but struggling to communicate.
He wasn't able to talk. He was able to grunt.
So Steve decided to test his son's mental functions. Using a dry erase board, he asked Scott to copy geometric shapes. He was able to do it. And then he did something no one expected.
When he finished writing, he lifted up his left hand in like a thumbs up kind of a thing and grunted. And what he had done is he had written his name, Scott, on the whiteboard. And he wanted to make it very clear, I'm here, and treat me like I'm here.
It was the beginning of a long and hard road back, with intensive speech, physical, and occupational therapy at a succession of VA facilities. While Scott was in the hospital, General John Abizaid, commander of the American forces in Iraq, awarded him a Purple Heart. Then later, as a mark of respect, Scott's unit presented it to him again when he received his promotion to staff sergeant.
We had him with his platoon, and they called him out, and he came up and was given these awards and decorations. And it just meant the world to him to be in formation with his guys again. And it meant the world to them as well.
It was actually pretty kind of scary. It was really cold outside. The field was not very level. He refused to go out there with his cane. He was just bound and determined that he would go out there and be a soldier.
Eventually, Scott had surgery to insert a plastic plate where a piece of his skull had been removed. Through it all, he remained optimistic that someday he would return to the job he loved.
Even though I got hurt, I didn't just try to get out of the Army. I didn't try to. I want to stay.
Today, more than 3 years after being shot, he's made remarkable progress. This winter, he participated in a Wounded Warriors bike ride at a veterans hospital in Palo Alto. Riding with a partner because of his partial blindness, Scott seemed confident as ever.
It's quite a joy to be able to see him back in the public again.
Hey, Mom.
Bye, guy.
His blindness is probably permanent.
Both eyes over is black. Everything from here over is all black.
As part of the therapy for his vision loss, Scott learned to play golf at the VA.
I can't beat a blind guy. I don't know what I'm doing out here.
It's a difficult game, even for someone with 2 good eyes.
Where you at?
You want some coaching
Yeah,
here?
come here.
Back it off about 50%. Just hit it.
Away from the golf course, he learned to work with tools and to cook, life skills he might need when he's on his own. But to Scott, the most important therapy may have been this.
Setting to the...
You sure those 2?
On the porch. There's not much to do. My child and I go to, when she goes to sleep, and I go, or when she gets onto the phone or whatever, you know, even takes me a long time to be able to read.
But you're working on it.
Yes. That's me forever.
After several weeks in the Palo Alto VA, Scott was ready to graduate and go home.
Congratulations.
With help from his parents and brother, he's raising 3-year-old Allie. His marriage didn't survive the stresses of rehabilitation, and it's left him a single parent.
His job now is to be daddy, and I think he's going to do a real good job of it.
Today, being a good dad is his #1 priority, and it's giving him a chance to put his hard work in the hospital to good use.
This is the book that Daddy was reading when he was a kid.
So I think that over time, as he's working with Allie and she's learning new things, he will learn them just as well.
Yeah. The main reason to be alive is to have my child. And now I want more.
Scott will probably carry that bullet around in his brain for the rest of his life. Doctors don't want to risk the surgery to remove it. Recently, the Army recommended that he be retired on permanent disability. Scott's reaction? That's from the Army, right? Well, I can try the Navy, since they're not as tough. Scott is one of thousands of servicemen and women who have come home from Iraq and Afghanistan with traumatic brain injuries. To all of the wounded soldiers, Scott has this message.
Don't give up. Don't give up. It's too cold.